They sailed into calm Arctic waters on a bright July morning, 12 ships, over 200 men, and not a single sign of danger on the horizon. The Arctic Convoy was supposed to be a routine supply run, the kind sailors joked about for being too easy. But only 36 hours later, every ship vanished. No storm. No ice. No distress signal. Just silence. Rescue teams searched for months. Satellites scanned the region for years. Nothing. No debris. No oil slick. Not even a life jacket. It was as if the ocean had erased them, cleanly, deliberately, surgically. Locals began whispering that the Arctic wasn't just cold, it was alive. Watching. Waiting. Hungry. And then, 50 years later, something impossible happened. In the middle of a perfectly still night, all 12 ships drifted out of a wall of fog, completely intact. Engines dead. Cabins untouched. Food still on the tables. Clocks frozen at the exact same second. But there was one thing missing. Every single crew member. Gone. Without struggle. Without footprints. Without time passing. And what investigators later discovered deep inside the hull changed everything we thought we knew about the Arctic. They called it the easiest voyage of the summer. A short supply run across calm Arctic waters, blue skies overhead, flat ocean below, and weather reports cleaner than a postcard. On July 14, 1972, 12 ships formed the convoy. Old cargo carriers, a few reinforced ice-class vessels, and a flagship trawler leading the line. 216 sailors. Every one of them in good spirits. Some joked about finishing early and heading home for midsummer festivals. Others passed around coffee, pointing at the horizon glowing gold under the Arctic sun. It was the kind of day that made even veteran sailors forget just how unforgiving the Arctic could be. At 10:23 a.m., the convoy radioed their final routine check-in. Visibility perfect. Conditions calm. Moving steadily north. That was it. No distress call. No strange interference. Just normal communication that suddenly became their last recorded words. Over the next few hours, radar operators watching the convoy's progress noticed something odd, not alarming at first, but strange enough to take notes. The ships began slowing down in perfect synchronization. Not gradually, like encountering wind or ice, but sharply, as if all 12 vessels hit an invisible barrier. Then, without warning, one by one, they dropped off radar. Not drifted. Not faded. Disappeared, instantly, like stepping behind a curtain. The first assumption was equipment failure. Arctic radars were old, temperamental, easily fooled by atmospheric conditions. But when the backup systems showed the same blank screen, the same sudden loss, panic set in. Search teams were mobilized within hours. A helicopter from a nearby station was dispatched first. The pilot expected to see debris or flashing emergency lights, anything. Instead, he found nothing but endless blue, perfectly calm, perfectly silent. The ocean looked untouched, as if no massive steel ships had passed through it just a day earlier. Within 48 hours, a full joint search operation was launched. For weeks, boats and aircraft scoured the region. They mapped it grid by grid. They dragged sonar. They searched under ice shelves, over ridges, along deep trenches. They dropped markers, buoys, even experimental submersibles. The result was always the same, nothing. Sailors whispered that the Arctic had swallowed the convoy. Older locals muttered something darker, that the Arctic didn't swallow things, it kept them. By week 3, investigators started collecting interviews from nearby weather stations. One station operator claimed he had seen a massive fog formation on the night of the disappearance, something unnaturally shaped, like a wall rising from the water. Not drifting, not spreading, but standing still. When he blinked, it was gone. Another crew member on a separate ship swore he heard a strange humming vibration that night, like steel being pulled apart far below the surface. No one could confirm it. No one could explain it. But these fragments only made the story twist deeper. What unsettled investigators most wasn't what they found, but what they didn't. In any maritime disaster, even the worst ones, the sea returned something. Wood. Plastic. Fuel. Clothing. A piece of rope. A nail. Anything. But here, there was nothing. The ocean had cleaned the slate so perfectly that even experienced Arctic captains admitted they had never seen anything like it. One official called it the cleanest disappearance in maritime history. Another simply refused to talk, saying the case felt wrong. The families of the lost crew demanded answers. Governments blamed faulty navigation, then changed the explanation to rogue waves, then quietly dropped the topic altogether as if the less they talked, the less real it became. But the disappearance grew into a legend. The Arctic Ghost Convoy. Some called it a curse. Others believed it was a military experiment gone wrong. Some swore the ships had crossed into a place they weren't supposed to reach. Years passed. The search ended. The records were filed away, and the world slowly forgot everyone except the scientists assigned to monitor that region. They kept noticing anomalies, cold patches forming suddenly, sonar distortions, strange echoes that didn't match any known marine pattern. Something was still there. Something was still moving. And then, 5 decades later, in a stretch of ocean just 140 miles from the original disappearance point, a cargo vessel reported something impossible. They saw lights in the fog, old, flickering, yellowish lights. As the fog thinned, a silhouette emerged. A ship. Then another. Then all 12. Drifting silently in a straight line, like they had just finished their original route. Their hulls intact. Their paint barely faded. No rust. No damage. No signs of aging. It was as if 50 years had passed everywhere except on those ships. But the most horrifying part wasn't their condition. It was the stillness. No movement inside. No sound. No crew. What the recovery teams found next would change everything. When recovery teams boarded the first ship, they expected chaos. Signs of struggle. Panic. Damage. Anything that could explain why 216 men had vanished. Instead, they stepped into a silence so deep it felt unnatural. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, making you aware of your own breathing. Every cabin door was closed, every drawer pushed in, every chair perfectly in place, as if the crew had simply stood up and walked out a moment ago. Coffee mugs were still filled. Plates still held half-eaten meals, untouched by rot or mold, as if time itself refused to move forward inside those walls. What struck investigators hardest was the temperature. Outside, the Arctic wind bit like knives. But inside the ships, it was warm, unnaturally warm. Not from heaters, those were long dead. This warmth felt different, like stepping into a room that had been occupied just seconds earlier. One investigator later said it felt like the afterbreath of something living. Another refused to enter any further after noticing his breath didn't fog inside, even though it should have. Instruments confirmed it, the interior temperature didn't match any natural thermal pattern. Then came the logs. On most ships, the captain maintains a daily record. Weather conditions, route, speed. Ordinary entries, until the final page. Every single logbook in the convoy ended at the exact same minute, 10:24 a.m., July 14, 1972. 1 minute after their final radio check-in. But what made the pages shake in investigators' hands wasn't the timestamp. It was the ink. Fresh. Wet. As if the writing had been done seconds before the recovery team arrived, 50 years too late. Even stranger, the final note wasn't technical. It was a sentence repeated across multiple logs, in the handwriting of different captains, written with almost mechanical precision. They are here. Just that. No explanation. No panic scribbles. No follow-up. Just 3 words that suggested the crews had seen something, or someone. As investigators moved deeper through the ships, they found something even more disturbing. Every clock, wristwatches, wall clocks, navigation timers, had stopped at 10:24 a.m. Not broken. Not damaged. Stopped clean, as if the second hand had been frozen mid-air. And when one investigator touched the metal casing of a stopped wall clock, he jerked his hand back instantly. It was ice cold, so cold it burned. But the real turning point came when they reached the communications room of the flagship. On the floor, neatly arranged like a ritual, lay 12 crew uniforms. Perfectly folded. Boots aligned. Each set placed with exact precision. None stained, none torn. But inside one shirt pocket, investigators found something impossible, a sealed envelope addressed to whoever boards this ship. The handwriting didn't match any known crew member. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper, yellowed but not deteriorated, bearing one chilling message. We didn't leave. That single sentence shattered every earlier theory. The crew didn't abandon ship. They believed they were still on board, even though no one could see them. This discovery forced investigators to consider something far darker. What if the men had slipped somewhere beyond perception? Not dead. Not alive. Just gone in a way the human mind wasn't built to understand. But the deeper the team searched, the more the Arctic seemed to resist. Tools malfunctioned. Batteries drained. Radio static grew thick and violent, as if something inside the ships hated being observed. One diver inspecting the hull swore he heard tapping from inside the steel, slow, rhythmic, like someone signaling. When he called for a colleague to listen, the tapping stopped instantly. Another team found strange frost patterns on the inner walls. Not random shapes, spirals. Perfect spirals, repeating again and again, as if something cold and intelligent had traced them with a finger. And then came the most unsettling discovery. Inside the cargo hold of the 5th ship, resting in a metal container, was a thick slab of ice. Perfectly rectangular, edges sharp, like it had been cut with intention. Embedded deep within it was something shaped like a human hand, longer, thinner, with too many joints. Scientists tried melting the ice under controlled conditions, but no matter how much heat was applied, it didn't change. It didn't melt. It didn't respond at all. Almost as if the object inside wasn't meant to be released. By day 3 of the investigation, half the recovery crew requested evacuation, reporting vivid nightmares and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Some claimed they saw shadows moving where light should have been still. A hardened naval officer described waking up in the night convinced someone was breathing over his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there. But the warmth on the back of his neck remained. Yet for all the terror, the greatest mystery was this: the ships themselves. Their condition defied every natural law. No corrosion on the hulls. No algae. No bacterial growth. Even the oldest cargo carrier looked like it had been built last month. Scientists sampled the paint. Its chemical aging showed less than 6 months of exposure, despite spending 50 years in the harshest water on Earth. It was as if the convoy had sailed into a moment, and returned untouched. And as the investigation team prepared to open the sealed lower decks, areas untouched since the disappearance, something happened that forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew. Something began moving below. The first sign was subtle, a low vibration under the investigators' boots. Not loud. Not violent. Just enough for everyone to stop talking mid-sentence and stare at the floor, waiting for it to happen again. The sound returned, deeper this time, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through steel. One of the officers whispered, it's coming from below." His voice trembled in a way no Arctic wind could explain. The lower decks had been sealed since the crew vanished. Not because of damage, but because every latch was locked from the inside. It took nearly an hour to cut through the frozen metal. When the door finally cracked open, a gust of air spilled out, warm, heavy, almost humid. Completely wrong for a ship that had spent half a century in the coldest water on Earth. The team stepped back instinctively. The human body knows when something isn't right long before the brain does. They descended the stairwell slowly, flashlights cutting through the thick air. The temperature kept rising with every step. A scientist behind the group muttered that the air felt lived in, like someone had just walked through minutes before. The vibration grew stronger, coming in slow intervals, like something was breathing in the darkness. At the bottom of the stairwell, they found the source of the warmth. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, and lining the walls were handprints, dozens of them. Human-sized, but elongated, each one smeared into the metal like the heat of a palm had melted it. The patterns were recent. Fresh. They shouldn't have been possible. One investigator reached out and touched a print. He jerked his hand away immediately. It was warm. Then came the next impossible detail. Down the hallway, a soft glow flickered under a door. A warm, golden light, just like the light from a furnace or a lantern. Except no power worked down here. They approached the door carefully. Something moved inside. A soft shuffle. A slow drag. Not frantic. Not aggressive. Almost tired. No one wanted to open it, but they had come too far to turn back. When the officer pushed the door slowly, the light spilled out around the edges. Warm. Alive. The room inside was bright enough to hurt their eyes, and there, sitting in the center, was a circle of boots. 12 pairs. Arranged carefully around a metal grate in the floor. And beside the boots, footprints. Fresh footprints. Wet footprints. A full set of them circling the grate, leading away, and disappearing into the walls, as if the person who made them had simply walked into solid steel. The scientist kneeling beside the boots felt the floor grate with his gloves. It was warm. Warmer than human body temperature. Something beneath it was generating heat. Something alive. Moving. Breathing. The officer leaned over the grate to shine his light down, and froze. On the metal below were marks. Not scratches. Not rust. Symbols. Carved into the steel with something impossibly sharp, forming a spiral pattern. A perfect continuation of the spirals found earlier in the ships, each shape carved with surgical precision. The deeper he looked, the more the pattern pulled his attention inward, like the eye of a storm. He felt his pulse slow. His breathing shift. His vision tunnel. Something about the design felt ancient, as if it didn't belong to this world or this time. A sudden metallic clang snapped him out of the trance. Behind them, the door they had forced open slammed shut with bone-rattling force. The room vibrated. The warm light flickered. The grate beneath their feet pulsed, once. Twice. A slow, living rhythm. Then they heard it. A voice. Not loud. Not clear. But unmistakably human. A whisper rising from beneath the grate. A single word, spoken like someone exhaling the last breath they'd ever take. The team backed away instantly. One officer fell trying to reach the door. Another dropped their equipment. The whisper came again, stronger, closer, echoing up from the metal like someone trapped inches below the surface. The grate shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The spirals began to glow faintly, pulsing with each whispered breath. One scientist scrambled for his radio, shouting for evacuation, but the static swallowed his voice whole. The warm light abruptly vanished, plunging the room into darkness. The whisper stopped. Silence. A silence so thick it felt alive. Then the vibration began again, but this time, it wasn't a slow pulse. It was footsteps. Soft at first, then heavier. A pattern unmistakably human, walking directly beneath the floorboards, pacing in a slow, deliberate circle. Every person in that room realized the same thing at once. There was something down there. Something that had walked those footprints. Something that had carved those spirals. Something that had been waiting. And now it was awake. The footsteps stopped directly under the grate. The metal bulged upward, bending, not breaking, but distorting like something with enormous strength was pressing from below. The room filled with heat again. Breath-stealing. Unnatural. Not like fire, more like the inside of a living creature. And then, through the blistering heat, came a third whisper. Not afraid this time. Not weak. A whisper filled with purpose. We didn't leave. The same words found in the envelope. The same message scrawled across the logs. Only this time, they weren't written. They were spoken. The grate flexed again, harder. Something beneath tried pushing its way through. The steel groaned, stretched, then suddenly snapped back to shape as if whatever was below changed its mind. The light returned. Brief. Blinding. And everything went still. The footsteps stopped. The heat faded. The room fell silent again. When the door finally burst open, forced by a rescue team responding to the lost radio signal, the investigators inside were alive, but shaken to the core. None could speak. One refused to step onto metal flooring ever again. Another quit the mission entirely, leaving without collecting his pay. And the ships? They were evacuated. Studied. Monitored. Until one morning, 3 weeks later, every single vessel was gone. Vanished. No engine sounds. No radar signature. No debris. Nothing. Just empty Arctic water where 12 ships had been anchored. And this time, there were no footprints. No warmth. No whispers. Only a final radio signal, recorded at 3:12 a.m., a faint, distorted voice whispering through static. They returned. They say the Arctic keeps its secrets buried beneath miles of silence, but tonight, you and I uncovered something that refuses to stay buried. 12 ships vanished in perfect weather, reappeared without a soul on board, and then, just when the world thought it finally had answers, they disappeared again, as if the ocean simply reclaimed what belonged to it. If those ships truly returned after 50 years, then whatever took them in the first place isn't finished. And if the last radio whisper is real, if someone, or something, said, they returned, then this story is far from over. Some mysteries fade with time. This one is only getting louder. So if you felt even a single chill tonight, hold on to it, because in the next part, we're going deeper. Past the ice. Past the silence. Past the places maps refuse to show. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find out what followed those ships back from the dark. Until then, stay curious. Stay brave. And remember, out here, the ocean doesn't forget. It only waits.